This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. James Murdoch, the CEO of 21st Century Fox, saying the events in Charlottesville and the president's reaction should concern all Americans. And he's backing up his words with strong action. I'm going to go right away to Jonathan Greenblatt. He's the CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, and Ambassador Nicholas Burns, a former U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs. I'm so happy that you're here, both of you. Jonathan, I'm glad that you're here tonight, because Rupert Murdoch, who is the CEO, James Murdoch, I should say, is the CEO of 21st Century Fox, the son of the conservative Rupert Murdoch, lashing out at this president over his reaction to Charlottesville. He is pledging to donate $1 million to your organization, the Anti-Defamation League. You spoke to him. What's your reaction?
Look, I'm certainly humbled by James's generosity. It's an incredibly bold thing to do, especially in a moment, like you said, when he has a particular set of corporate interests at play. But the fact of the matter is James is stepping up because he's an American. And what we saw in Charlottesville and the reaction of the past week has been so in contrast to our core American values.
Yeah. Well, so when you get James Murdoch on the phone, when someone says James Murdoch wants to talk to you, I mean, what did you think? Like,
well, you know, I've gotten a lot of these calls over the past week, to be honest, Don. Yeah. We got calls in advance of the march because we knew it was happening and we reported on it. We got calls literally over the weekend with people saying, how is this happening in my country? That there is some debate about the idea of Nazis marching in the streets.
And James Murdoch didn't want people to, but it was somehow leaked, right? Because
yeah,
what happened?
Right. James stepped forward and said, look, we want to do something, he and his wife, Catherine.
Yeah.
He then not only extended to me that he would be making this contribution, he wrote a note to a number of his friends, a personal, private note that basically said how upset that they were, yeah, and encouraging people to take action. And I guess that's something.
Yeah, and it has been reported on someone, and somehow the media got a hold of it. CNN obtained Murdoch's email, and this is what it says in part. It says, we watched this last week. This is for you, Ambassador Burns. We watched this last week in Charlottesville, and the reaction to it by the President of the United States concerns all of us as Americans and free people. I can't even believe I have to write this. Standing up to Nazis is essential. There are no good Nazis. You hear that? There are no good Nazis or Klansmen or terrorists. Democrats, Republicans, and others must all agree on this, and it compromises nothing for them to do so. Ambassador, what do you make of this alignment of business and political leaders of this president's response? I mean, listen, coming from the CEO of 21st Century Fox, Fox News, which is a conservative-leaning news organization, and him writing that saying, no good Nazis, I think that's in direct response to saying, you know, there were some, I'm paraphrasing here, good people in the crowd, or fine people in the crowd.
Well, I think this is an extraordinary moment in American politics, because I can't remember a time, my first job in government was the Jimmy Carter administration. I can't remember a time when a president in 1 week has lost the support of his own political party and been repudiated by that party, and now of the most important business leaders of the country, to have 3 of his business councils disbanded. Nothing like this has happened, and it's because he's lost his bearings, and he's shown incredible moral weakness on the central issue in American history that we're built around this idea, this noble idea of human equality, and he's rewriting the history of our country. He doesn't know the history of the Civil War. He's confusing things, and he's showing moral cowardice and paying the consequences for it.
Explain to me when you say he's lost his bearings. What do you mean?
Imagine an American president in the 21st century trying to drag us back into the conflict over the Civil War, of what it meant, of why the war was fought, of why we should not have memorials to Confederate generals, because they tried to disband the country. They tried to defeat the country. They rebelled against the Union. And obviously, people thought that the conflict ended in April 1865. And Donald Trump now brings us back to the central issues of that war and doesn't speak against neo-Nazis and white supremacy after everything that Martin Luther King did, after the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act. He's dragging us back on the central issue of the country's history.
And we fought a war against Nazis, and we won, and we fought a war against the Confederacy, and we won that one
and we won that too.
Jonathan, you know, here I want both of you to listen. I want the audience to listen to this. I don't think this is played enough. I know you guys see it a lot. I see it, but every time I see it, I'm struck by it as if it's the first time. These chants that we heard in Charlottesville over the weekend, here they are.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
You know what?
This 2017, I can't believe it's happening in the United States. And talk to me about the kind of anti-Semitism we're seeing in this country right now.
Yeah, today is the 102nd anniversary of the lynching of Leo Frank. This heinous anti-Semitic murder that happened in Marietta, Georgia, after this man was falsely accused of killing a young girl. It was the event that galvanized the creation of the ADL in 1915. But here's the thing, you know what? We will replace those people. We will replace their inhumanity with humanity. We will replace their indecency with decency. Jews, African American, Latinos, white folks, people across all races, all faiths, all sexual orientations. That kind of prejudice not only has no place in our politics, it has no place in the public school.
As I was watching the coverage over the weekend, and it was sort of just disgusting to me, and I let it be known that it was people who were reflexively, just making excuses for this president. And what I thought was sadly lacking in a lot of the coverage was the anti-Semitic stuff. There was no one standing up for my Jewish brothers and sisters, because this was more than just about black and white. And the reason I'm saying that is because people in this election and nowadays don't tend to prioritize or put on a high enough priority anti-Semitism, racism, or bigotry of any kind. Money and economics seem to mean more than those issues. What's going on?
It's funny. I mean, as a Jewish community, we have achieved in so many ways. We have exceeded the expectations of our parents and our grandparents. But when you see a rally like that, when you hear that kind of rhetoric, which is lifted right out of the pages of Nazi Germany,
it's a playbook,
it's a reminder that our position is precarious and we can't take it for granted.
Before I come back to the ambassador, we were talking about, the ambassador mentioned the monuments, him not understanding the history of the country. You and I were talking about how Germany has wrestled with this issue and is doing a better job at it than us here in the United States.
It would appear to be that way. You know, my friend Brian Stevenson has written and talked a great deal about how Germany has wrestled to the ground the ghosts of its Nazi past. We have failed to do that, particularly in the South, with our Confederate past. The time to do so is now.
Yeah, and because people are afraid to discuss it. And if you talk about it, they say you're a race baiter or whatever. Unless you confront it head on, unless you teach people history, like I keep saying, one of the first lines in this, it talks about how elementary school children have to go to visit a Holocaust as part of the curriculum, right? Should we do that in the United States, where you have to go to a plantation, where you have to visit slave cabins, where you have to go to a cotton field, and on in order to understand the history of this country? Maybe.
Dos Passos said those who don't understand, don't know, Santiago, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt we have to have those.
Ambassador?
We've got to learn the history, and we've got to teach the kids the history. Up here in New England, where I live, if you look at many of the graves of the soldiers who fought in the Civil War, inevitably they'll say he fought in the War of the Rebellion. It was a rebellion against our Union. It was over the issue of slavery. It's the central event in the history of the United States. Every child in this country has to learn that history to be a citizen and to understand the moral weakness, the depravity of what President Trump is trying to do in his idiotic statements this week.
And we can't, and pun intended, we cannot whitewash history. We cannot teach people things about Robert E. Lee or about the Confederacy or about Southern pride that aren't true, because then you continue to perpetuate a lie, and then you have these racists marching in cities like they are now, Ambassador.
Well, and President Trump tweeted out this morning, if we take down the statues of Lee and Stonewall Jackson, who's next, he said? Washington and Jefferson? Well, the answer to that question is Washington and Jefferson, the first and third presidents, preserved the Union. They didn't try to take the Union down and divide it and end it. And that's exactly what the Confederacy tried to do to the Union over 4 years. It was the most horrible war we've ever fought in. More Americans died in that war than all the others fought together. If you look at the films of Ken Burns, a brilliant filmmaker, Ken says for the great majority of all the films he's made, race is at the center of it. And so for the president not to show moral leadership, he's abdicating the clear responsibility he has to all of us to lead us to a better place, and he's leading us to a worse place this week.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So here's the good news. I think Ken is right. The president has abdicated his moral leadership, but we can't wait. So I can tell you, we at the ADL are not going to wait. We're working now with business executives from Tim Cook at Apple to James Murdoch at 21st Century Fox. We're working now with mayors and have some big news coming out on that front. Interfaith clergy, other nonprofits.
Yeah.
The country can't wait for a president who just doesn't seem to get it.
I want to play this. This is also from Vice, and this was specifically about the president's Jewish son-in-law, daughter, and grandchildren. Watch this.
I'm here to spread ideas, talk, in the hopes that somebody more capable will come along and do that. Somebody like Donald Trump who does not give his daughter to a Jew.
So Donald Trump, but like more racist.
A lot more racist than Donald Trump. I don't think that you could feel about race the way I do and watch that Kushner bastard walk around with that beautiful girl.
You hadn't seen that. You were visibly...
Look, it is inexplicable that we're talking about this in the year 2017. I cannot believe that Nazis somehow have a seat at the table of the national conversation. So again, to the question of Jews will not replace us, we will replace them. Again, with
the question is,
humanity.
This is aimed specifically at the president's family. His response is inexplicable. What I want to know is, except for one tweet, right? Jared and Ivanka have said nothing. I think it could be. Well, I think the week before they may have been in Croatia on David Geffen's yacht, right? And then after, I know for a fact they were in Vermont, but I think they were before. Where are their senior advisors? What's going on with them?
Look, you know, I've worked in the West Wing. I don't really know how you get that. I never had that leisure schedule myself.
Silence speaks volumes. Thank you. Appreciate it.